Between the 8th and 5th centuries BC, the Jews were conquered and dispersed many times. Out of despair grew the hope that another giant killer like David would appear to lead and reunite them under God's law. The hope developed into a belief. This leader would naturally be a descendant of David. He would have the blessing of God. He would be another Messiah. Three centuries before the time of Jesus, the Jews fell subject to the forces of Alexander the Great, who stamped the Middle East with the pagan mark of Greek culture and religion. 150 years later, one of his successors set out to eradicate Judaism completely. Pagan statues were erected in the temple. Orgiastic rites were performed on the altars. And women who had their sons circumcised were put to death with the babies hung round their necks. This brutality fueled the fires of Judean resistance. Under the Maccabees, the Jews rebelled, and the pagan forces were overthrown. When the temple was reclaimed, the people spontaneously waved palms and sang in triumph, an event which became an annual celebration that would figure prominently in the story of Jesus. Jewish independence was not to last for long. The great Roman leader, Pompey, took Jerusalem and Palestine for Rome in 63 BC. He immediately trampled Jewish sensitivities underfoot by daring to enter the Holy of Holies, the temple's empty inner sanctum reserved for God. The act was seen as an omen. The prophets had said that the Messiah would come in the last times, the period just before the end of the world, a period which would be marked by catastrophe and disorder. Many saw the arrival of the Romans as a sign that the last times had arrived. Expectation grew feverishly. The feeling that something dramatic was to happen pervaded Jewish thought. But reactions to it differed. The Essenes, the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, shut themselves away in closed desert communities, sharing their goods and leading a life of simplicity to prepare for the changes that were to come. Their mystical approach attracted many. By contrast, the path for the Pharisees was to remain in touch with the ordinary people. They built the synagogues and earned themselves respect as teachers, for which the Hebrew word is rabbi. But they also had what might be termed a paramilitary wing, the so-called zealots, centered here, around Lake Galilee. A wild area that was traditionally the spawning ground of Jewish insurrection. Here, more than anywhere, was the Messiah prayed for and earnestly expected. He was seen as a warrior who would lead a victorious Jewish army against the Roman forces of occupation. For this reason, the Romans saved their most hideous form of execution for would-be messiahs and their supporters. And there were many. Amidst this seething cauldron, Jesus first entered history. The Jewish historian Josephus, who around the middle of the 1st century was a military commander here in Galilee, describes Jesus as a performer of paradoxical deeds. Terminology which directly links Jesus with the prophetic miracle workers who formed an inseparable part of ancient Jewish popular religion, especially here in the provinces, distant from Jerusalem. But Jesus was not the only such figure to be recorded in Galilee around this time. There were several sages, healers, and exorcists who later became known as the Hasidim, and who were believed by their countrymen to be able to foresee the future, work miracles, and heal by their words and prayers. Some of these Hasidim, like Jesus, are remembered to this day. This is the tomb of Honi and his 2 grandsons, Hanan and Hilkiah. All 3 celebrated for their power to call down rain in times of drought, and for the traditional virtues of the Hasidim, disregard for wealth and possessions, a preference for the spirit rather than the letter of the religious laws, and childlike devotion to their Father in heaven. Their impact can be judged by the preservation of their memory at sites like this for over 2,000 years.
The best-known Galilean charismatic other than Jesus was his younger contemporary, Hanina ben Dosa. He lived in a small town called Araba, only a few miles from Nazareth, where his tomb is still visited. He too was renowned as a healer. He too is said to have cured a sick child from a distance. He was famous for having mastered the queen of the demons, Agraf. Once, we are told, he deliberately stepped on the entrance of a snake's nest. Although Hanina was bitten, he remained unharmed, and the snake died. This story brings to mind Jesus' words, "I have given you power to step on snakes, and nothing will harm you." Hanina too, it is said, was proclaimed Son of God by a voice from the sky.
The name of God within Judaism is so sacred that it's still forbidden to be spoken aloud. But the Hasidim were an exception. They even addressed God as Father, a right they earned in the eyes of the people by their ability to teach and to heal.
In ancient times, healing was seen as a religious act, a view which is enjoying something of a revival in modern church practice. Sickness was the consequence of sin. Sin was induced by the devil, and mental sickness was evidence of possession by the devil. A healer therefore acted on behalf of God in repelling the causes and obliterating the effects of sin by means of exorcism, prayer, the laying on of hands, and other acts of physical contact with the sick.
The Gospels are full of stories of Jesus conducting works of healing, cures from possession, paralysis, blindness, deafness, leprosy, and many more. All these drawing great crowds to him. Many theologians have questioned such stories because they might have been invented to boast at claims of Jesus' divinity. Conversely,